Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Labyrinth of Limitations. This is episode 4, taking the elevator to borrow from the neighbors. First off, I'd like to, before we begin, just say thanks everybody who subscribed. We just went over 100 subscribers, so that's really exciting. I'm glad that people are getting into this, and it's really fun to talk to folks about it, so feel free to reach out to me. So what we're looking at here is we're continuing to talk about borrowing. Okay, so and we're going to talk about borrowing 3 notes on a chord, but I'm gonna share with you some tricks on borrowing that make it a lot easier to do that, so you can do it quickly. Um, the first couple examples here are just showing you the general idea. We want contrary motion. We don't want parallel motion because that's fine, but it's relatively it's easier to do than to think in opposite directions and grab a couple notes from below, a note from above. Is harder to do, and also this tends to produce smoother voice leading. The notes jump a little bit less when you do some more contrary motion in there. So we're going to use the elevator to do this. So reviewing the elevator, here it is. Whoops. And we can do that at every place in the scale, starting from here, starting to here. This is in C minor 6. And remember, with the elevator, that's what I'm calling it now because it's like you're going up and down the floors, and you can decide to stay on a floor if you want parallel motion. So I can go like, and then I can go down, and then I can go. This is an incomplete chord, so now I need to go to an octave chord, and then I went out to a 3, and I'm going to stay on a drop 3, right? And then I'm going to go from the drop 3, and then I'm going to go to an octave chord, and then shell, whoops, and that shell is then going to go to a triad, which is going to be, so I can choose when I want to go to a different floor, and that will create contrary motion, inward or outward. And then to create oblique motion, which is on the next page, dropped a page, I just ask myself about the notes that I want to move, because one note's going to stay the same, or at least one, and that's the oblique motion that we're talking about, is one note stays the same. So whatever notes I want to move, I ask myself what floor they're on. They could just be on the first floor, which is unison. Here in this example, they're on the thirds floor, which is the second floor. I'm sorry if that's a little confusing, but the second floor is for thirds. So that's like a little Mozart-y kind of classical sounding thing. Oblique motion, it's pretty. And then, so now we're looking at our borrowing, which is we're going to use contrary motion to do it. If I look at this chord, I'm borrowing one note is from below, and the other 2 are from above. So, but what I want to see is I just want to see what is this, and this is actually the highest 3 notes of an octave chord, which happens to be the next lower floor from where I want to end up. I'm borrowing on a drop 2, so I want to end up on a drop 2. I'm going to take notes from the next lower floor, the octave. I'm going to take the highest 3 notes to replace these 3 notes. So I'm going to go like that, as opposed to this, which is challenging, but that's staying on the same floor. See, that's parallel motion there, but I'm just going to go, and I can do that on the diminished. I can go, and then this is on another C minor 6, and then on a diminished. Really pretty sounds, and then on the C minor 6. See, I'm borrowing, but I'm going to go, instead of that, I'm going to go, and then like going through the elevator outwards, but I'm just going to grab those notes and do a borrowing instead, which is quite nice. I love it. So here it is, some examples. This works across the entire elevator on all the floors. So the next example is borrowing just on C minor 6. I'm going to end up on a drop 2. So this I already showed you, but I'll do it again. So now I'm going to end up on a drop 3. I'm going to go, and I'm grabbing the highest 3 notes of a drop 2, this drop 2. Generally, most of the time it's, I think of the lowest note that I'm borrowing, and I borrow from above on that voice. That's the general trick, but you kind of have to practice and work it out. They're all a little bit different, which makes it sound really nice. Here I'm going to end up on a drop 2 and 4. And this one is something we haven't talked about yet. It's called a drop 2 and 3. And a drop 2 and 3 voicing is where I take a note and I skip a string and I have the other 3 notes of the chord all together. So I could think of it as a drop 3 with the second string note down an octave. So instead of this, drop 3, C minor 6, I'm going to have like that, okay? Or I could think of it as a drop 2 right there, and I'm putting that note down an octave. And I kind of like that because I'm going to actually, since I'm only using the highest 3 notes of this, I'm going to view it as a drop 2 because it's easier for me than seeing it as a drop 2 and 3. So here I am. This is a drop 2. This is a drop 2 without the second string, and I'm going to borrow that on a diminished chord, which is nice. So I can do this on up the scale just to show you. So now I'm going to be on I'm going to end up on a C minor 6. This is the diminished. So a bit of a stretch, but really beautiful. And then I'm going to go. Beautiful sounds. I love those. So there are other tricks. Once you start looking at things this way, you start to see patterns. So say if you wanted to go and borrow on an octave chord. Here's an octave chord. Well, I'm going to need to go to the next lower floor, which is the shell chords, which are 3-note chords. I'm just going to take all 3 of those notes. But it can start to get confusing of which ones to grab. Like, okay, whoops, there's one, and here's one, which one, that's not correct. So I'm on C minor 6, so I need to do diminished. So a diminished shell voice might be this, might be this. And what's always going to work really nicely is to think actually of the drop 2. I'm on an octave chord. I'm going to think drop 2. I'm going to go out a floor. And I'm going to think of that one scale step down bass-wise. So I'm on scale degree 3. I'm going to go down to scale degree 2, do a drop 2. And the top 3 notes of that drop 2 are the notes of the shell voicing that I want to get a really nice voice leading. So here I am. I'm on diminished, the top part of a drop 2. I'm going to put that there. And then, and I resolve to my octave chord, which is really pretty. And then I'm going to do that same thing. Now I'm on a diminished octave chord, and I'm going to go, so that's from this drop 2. So I'm going to go, right? Pretty sounds. And then here I am here, octave version of this. So I'm going to go, here I am here. I did that one already. This one, this is the diminished. I'm going to go, wow, I like that. And then here I am on the 6. I'm going to go, whoops, did that wrong because I went to drop. There we go. So all of these sounds so pretty. So there's that. There's these beautiful, so many beautiful sounds. So then another one is there's other tricks. Again, you'll start to see. Here is 2 notes I'm going to borrow on the top of a drop 2. And I'm going to go, and those 2 notes I can view as being the top 2 notes of a drop 3. So this is for borrowing on a drop 2. I'm taking the top 2 notes of a drop 3, replacing them like that. Check that out. That's really cool. So I can go up to the diminished, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to go up to the next minor 6. I'm going to go, whoops, and I'm going to go up to this, and I'm going to go, and then I'm going to go up one more, and I'm going to go, beautiful sounds. I love those. So that's just borrowing 2. So interesting things here. So this is kind of, if you're familiar with suspensions or appoggiatura, then you might think this is the same thing, but there's some important distinctions. So here's a suspension just thing. I just kind of, a typical chain of suspensions. So something like that. And what that means is I'm taking parallel 6, and then I leave 1 behind, so it becomes a 7th, and it resolves. It suspends over. And that's kind of like, in a way, you could be like, well, gosh, now I'm going to go down to my diminished, so I'm going to go, right? And then there is that quality, but there's some very important differences besides just the sonic, more chromatic quality. One, we don't have to resolve these. So so here I am. I'm going to do, what am I looking at here? And I'm doing this. So this is major, I guess. So I see. And then, yeah, so I don't need to resolve that. It's perfectly fine, just like it is. Here's another one. I can resolve part of the notes. So I can go like, it's a pretty sound. And I have a borrowed note. You know, so I'm what am I saying there? Is, oh no, that's not resolving part of it. That's just the same as the previous, just another version of it. Sorry about that. And then now we have, even when you want to resolve, you could do a chain of borrowings and then just resolve the last one of them. That's a thing that sounds nice. So here I am. I'm going to go, I'm borrowing 3 notes, and then, which is pretty, you know. So I just, you know, again, that's, which is nice. I just did I actually resolved the diminished chord. This one, you know, because I just resolved that one. So you can kind of experiment and try things. And then another one that's really nice to show really quickly is this is borrowing and resolving just part of it. So this is, so I'm in G major, and I'm going to do E flat minor 6. That's E flat minor 6, diminished. And I'm going to go borrowing, and I'm going to borrow below, and then here's one more of those. It's, so it's so I'm borrowing 3 notes. Still borrowing 1 note, that 3rd string note, and then pretty sound. Yeah, I could have done that. And then could have done it there too, same concept. And so, but in this example, this A is not part of the E flat minor 6 scale. This A is just a half step below. So important point, you could just borrow a half step below. That always sounds nice, you know. So so you have an option when borrowing from below. From above, I guess you could too, but I don't see it as much, and I don't do it myself. I don't really hear it as working the same. But from below, it's really nice. So here I am. Sometimes it will be coincidentally, the half step below will be in the scale, of course. But here I am on, I think this is in the major, isn't it? So, okay. So that's C major 6, borrowing, and I'm just borrowing the sharp 5. and I'm on the diminished, and instead of borrowing the A, I'm going to go. See, I could go. And I could go. But instead, I'm going to keep doing that. And then, right? And then I'm going to go. And then, and that's a nice sound. You know, that's a nice sound. So you have those options there. And I'd like to end, or the document has a nice something that I say to my students a lot, and it's just that understanding music is something that I think this is a nice thing to think about as you're going through these things, because I'm sure this stuff is new for some of you, for a lot of you guys, or at least some of you, and understanding music is in a way it's about ignoring the right information at the right time. So when I say that these are all the same chord, this and this and this and this and this, those are all the same chord because they're all C major. Those are all made of the notes C, E, and G. And when I say this and this are the same thing, well, they're both major chords. You know, so I'm saying that I understand something about it by ignoring some details, and that allows me to, like, you know, if you do this and I do this, I know that it's going to work together because they're the same chord. You know, things like that are important. But then it's also important to not ignore details. Devil's in the details, they say. Don't ignore details. And sometimes when things seem like something you've seen before, as is the case with these concepts from Barry, sometimes someone will be like, well, that's just blah, 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 whatever. I like to think of D minor 7 as D minor 7 instead of F major 6. Sure, fine. You know, then maybe you don't have anything to learn, and it saves you some time. But we can risk missing out on something that could be of real value. Both for there's more color in paying attention to little details and acknowledging them and seeing differences, and there is oftentimes a powerful concept hidden in the details. And these concepts that I'm trying to share with you guys are about learning to think contrapuntally and in multiple lines on the guitar, and to see chromaticism, which we're going to look at a variety of pieces with these methods and others, to see chromatic things that normally are kind of beguiling as being actually as simple as diatonicism, and finding ways to develop our own language. This stuff doesn't make you sound like anybody in particular. Barry Harris's concepts don't have a sound. They don't. Don't be fooled about that. They have a concept, a process, and you can use them to sound any way you want, really. They're very flexible concepts, and it's beautiful in that way. So anyway, that's my little discussion at the end. If you like this video, please pass it on. Subscribe, give it a like. I am available for lessons, so you can reach out to me if you'd like to get lessons through Zoom, and check out Things I Learned from Barry Harris. I'm a big fan of that page, and lots of information there. And keep practicing. Thanks so much, everybody.